Hello, welcome. My name is Robin and I'm the Head of Product Visualization here at Burroughs. In this web presentation, we'll explore how we helped Ford Motor Company launch one of its most exciting, innovative cars in a very long time, why we used Epic's Unreal Engine to produce an absolute ton of content for this particular car launch, and how we did some of the projects. The car in question is the all-electric Ford Mustang Mach-E, so let's take a look at what we did and then we can discuss how we did some of it.
We designed the Mustang Mach-E around people.
The engineering, the software and hardware teams all pushed the limits of what was possible. And then our Ford Performance team got involved and they pushed even further.
For several decades, Unreal Engine has been the premier tool by which game developers build premium video game titles. Agencies like Burroughs have been leading the auto industry into this space. Real-time engines have got to the point today where the visual complexity and the visual fidelity represents the product accurately.
Thanks for taking the time to join us on this live stream. Let me introduce some of the people from Burroughs involved in this major launch. Julian Fraser, Group Account Director, Ben Walker, Head of 3D, Torenne Chin, Real-Time Supervisor, and me, Robin Lowry, Head of Product Visualization. Before we get into this amazing project for Ford, let me give you a brief history of Burroughs the company. I'll try not to bore you too much, but we've been around for over 50 years now, and we started using CG probably 20 years ago. This was mainly for our automotive clients to visualize products that they didn't have, couldn't get hold of, or they had to show under the skin. We started using 3ds Max version 2 with the render engine called Brazil and also Mental Ray. The quality was good, but we found a better solution at the time, which was VPS ART render drives, which were hardware ray tracing boxes. They gave the best possible quality you could get that no software render engine at the time could do. On the downside, our render farm queuing system was not very high tech. We had these little plastic cups with numbers on, so artists would know who was on which drive. I'm now going to briefly hand over to Ben Walker to tell you a little bit about our journey into real time.
Thank you, Robin. Our journey with UE4 started about 5 years ago when we began looking into different real-time software and got talking to the guys from the enterprise team at Epic. We shared our ideas, requirements and frustrations at the time, and they helped convince us that UE4 was the way to go with our real-time team. That team started out pretty small, just a handful of graduates straight from uni, not including Mark Brain here, but the work they produced was enough to convince us that UE4 was the way forward. Within a few months of setting up the team, we were able to move most of our Ford card lines that we held data for into UE4 to build one of our first real-time experiences, which you can see playing on the screen at the moment. Then, with some help from Epic and our own automotive experience, we were able to produce one of the first automotive retail configurators that we know of for a client of ours, McLaren. Mark, the McLaren Automotive Real-Time Configurator, was used to help launch the McLaren 720S back in early 2017. It's a full 4K touchscreen experience that sits in dealers and trade shows around the world. It's really where our real-time work took off, but it also led the way to expanding our real-time team and capabilities. Over the years, we've added more models to it as we continue to push the bar with the visual fidelity that we could get from the engine. We now use UE4 to produce all the 2D renders as well that populate the website configurator for some of the more recent vehicle launches. And this shows the way that the industry is moving in our eyes. Once you've invested the effort into building a real-time model that looks as good as they do in UE4, then leveraging that experience to generate tons of other great content for imagery or any animations just makes total sense. And that brings us on to what we're going to talk about today. How we used UE4 to help provide all kind of assets to support the launch of the Ford Mach-E back in November of 2019. For that, I'll hand you over to our Group Account Director, Julian Fraser.
Hi, I'm Julian Fraser, Group Account Director at Burroughs. We've worked with Ford for a number of years now, and in that time, we've always looked to continue to innovate and push the boundaries in order to stay ahead of the curve. So when Ford were planning to release arguably their most important product in recent times, we knew that we needed to come up with something special to help promote this new vehicle. We had a number of challenges in approaching this project. Firstly, time. We had around 7 months before an international reveal event on the world stage, so we needed a platform to create a number of different types of assets in a short space of time. Quality. We needed a tool which was able to support our world-class quality of content output, which the client had come to expect. Flexibility. With a number of high-level key client stakeholders, we needed to be able to tweak, change, and finesse our offering to accommodate a number of different needs. Complexity. For the reveal, we needed to incorporate and produce diverse assets for every single different spec combination for the vehicle, particularly as this vehicle would be sold via an online e-commerce solution. It needed to be accurate for customers to order their vehicles. Bringing products to life. We needed to be able to tell key product stories for Ford and Conquest customers who may not be familiar with the new technologies that Ford had included in their all-new, all-electric vehicle. Finally, we knew it had to be special. We needed to create cut-through to announce this incredibly important vehicle to the world. Ultimately, as you'll see, we managed to create visually stunning outputs in a large number of variants down to market level specification in a very short space of time.
So once we had a brief, we knew we needed to get to work straight away. It's no surprise that meant we needed to build a 3D model of the car. It's pretty standard in the industry to have CAD data from the manufacturer, and we're no different at Burroughs. So first we access the CAD systems, we pull the data to Torenne servers, and then we start to prep it for visualization. We've got a skilled team of data prep artists who specialise in doing this type of optimization. That being said, if you're used to working on game models, you'll probably have a very different idea of optimize than we do. But we build the car up part by part until we're a full assembly. One of the great things about UE4 is it can handle measures like these without skipping a beat. It's not fussy about perfect topology, which helps us out a lot when all we normally deal with is measures like these. And then there are parts of the car where CAD just doesn't realistically describe the soft surfaces of things like seats, seat belts, steering wheels, leather, that kind of stuff. For parts like these, we have a modelling team who take the CAD as a base but then hand model them to include the right level of realism. They have to make a seat look soft, creased and realistic without making it look too old or worn, so that can be quite tricky for some clients to kind of strike the very delicate balance that they require. While one team is prepping the data and building the model, we also have another working on materials. At Burrows we use Perforce and structure the project in a way that allows different teams to work concurrently on the model and materials, also the lighting, environments, sequencer and any gameplay mechanics, so it really works well and allows the project to start coming together really quickly. For materials we tend to use Substance to create our base shaders but then do final refinements directly in UE4. For this project, we tried to get UE4 involved much earlier than normal in the data prep process, and one of the reasons for that is that UE4 allows us to really explore the car in great detail. We give this level of control to our product specialists and let them inspect the car to their heart's content. They can zoom into features like the wing mirrors or the door handles, then open up the door and jump inside. You can see the level of detail in the interior materials that UE4 allows us to achieve here. We give the model a really thorough check and make sure that every animation is working correctly. Things like the bonnet, and even the little gas struts, like all those little details that we have to work on and make sure they're accurate. We can open up the charge port and have a look inside too. We test out all the animated parts of the car at this stage, including things like the little sequences that happen when we turn on the lights. And it's just really a very powerful tool for making sure the model we're building is completely accurate. It would be great if we only had to prep one version of the car, but the thing that really goes hand in hand with real-time engines and product visualization is configuration. We've got the ability to change the spec of this car at the click of a button, so whether you want North American, European or any global market Mach-E is all right here in the model. It just means that we have to swap different meshes in and out, and then also change some material assignments, but again UE4 makes very light work of this. We just add every configurable part of the car to a blueprint and then send that commands to activate meshes and apply materials, and it just works instantly. Whilst one team is building the model and all the configurable options, another will be working on building environments to show it off in its best light. I'm going to hand back over to Robin now to talk about how we do that.
So I've been very fortunate and very lucky to be involved in many traditional car shoots over the years, and with that I've come to fully understand lighting and how that affects the mood of car photography and cars in film, and also how we then transpose that mood, that lighting, over to CGI generated content. As the head of product visualization here at Burrows, one of my jobs is to make sure all parties that are involved in this project are happy with the final results that we've created in CG, how the product looks, but especially how that product looks in the environments that we've created for it. Car launch as major as this one, there are lots of decision makers involved, from the full marketing teams, the car designers themselves, our own internal art directors and external agencies that all need content that we're creating to help launch this car. I've got to tell you, it's a real minefield of opinions. All I can say is we had quite a few. But then if you add to that the tight timings, as usual, we don't have enough time to produce what we need, but somehow we managed to produce something that looks fantastic in the time we do have. It was imperative that we could visualize this car very quickly and make changes and update it fast too. The reason being that as we were producing content, they were still finalizing the designs on the car with material and trim finishes. So Epic's Unreal Engine gave me the ultimate weapon to make sure we could achieve this. We were also producing a real-time touchscreen experience for this launch. So early on we took the decision to push the engine and push the artist hard to get the look and the quality Ford demanded for this car. Then we went a bit further. I pushed the guys even harder by producing lots of 2D pre-rendered content from the Unreal Engine, such as full animation sequences, so things like fly around the car, go inside the car, showing features, operating, stuff like that, and a lot of still images. We also knew the client would probably be changing their minds up until the last minute, and guess what? They didn't disappoint. They obviously changed their mind a hell of a lot, but I can honestly say without using Epic's Unreal Engine, we wouldn't have been able to produce a lot of the content we did in the time we had, and especially to the highest quality we achieved.
Today I would like to give you a quick overview of how we at Burroughs created the Ford Mustang Mach-E cinematic in Unreal Engine 4. I won't be going into detail about how it was done, but rather give you a quick breakdown of our process and creative workflow. Having the ability to see the lighting, materials, and lens effects like depth of field in real time can really help you to compose better shots and give you the freedom to be a little more adventurous. So before starting this animation, it is important to understand the brief and the intended purpose of the cinematic. Also, a good understanding of the subject being shot, its highlighted features, and the intended target audience is important to know before commencing. This information helps to inform of the composition, timing, and pace of the sequence, as well as areas of the vehicle we need to give more attention to. At this point, a suitable audio track is chosen. One we feel will suit the style of the animation and help the viewer make an emotional connection while watching. So, before animating, I created a storyboard and used it as a guide for the final composed shots. Very often the frames of the storyboard are generated from cameras created within UE4. This can help to reduce production time, as these cameras then become the base point for the animated cinematic shots. When setting up shots on the sequencer, I first like to set up my keyframe interpolation to match the style of the shots I plan to create. In this case, slow pans and orbits. In the Editor Preferences menu, under Content Editors Level Sequence Editor menu, I set my key interpolation to linear. This ensures all the keys created on the timeline are linear, which is ideal as most shots won't need to ramp in or out. Other important settings to update before starting to animate are your frame rate and aspect ratio. The latter I can set in my camera settings. As mentioned earlier, I prefer to block out my shots before I start to animate. I focus on the composition of each shot, then combine those shots on sequencer to see how well they work together. This gives me a good preview of how well the cinematic flows, and is also a good way of sharing your ideas with others before starting to animate. I also like to add audio at this point, as seeing the imagery while hearing the audio can really help with narrowing down and selecting the right track. From here, I animate each shot using the chosen audio as a rough guide. This helps me to decide the timing and length of my shots. Like a choreographed dance, I sync the animation and cuts to the beat and cues in the audio, as seen in this example here. The bonnet closes and the indicator flashes in time with the beat dropping. This I feel makes the overall experience more engaging to watch. I also pay close attention to the flow of the animation. This helps the viewer understand what area of the vehicle they are looking at. And wherever possible, I try to avoid big jumps between shots, as this can sometimes be disorientating. Next, I go over each individual shot, refining the keys of my animations in the curve editor. This is an important step when animating any object in UE4 and can give you precise control of your animated parameters. A handy shortcut I like is to use the number keys from 1 to 5 to quickly swap the keyframe interpolation. I find shortcuts like this a very useful way of speeding up my workflow. Another parameter I pay close attention to is the depth of field. This is an important tool for focusing a viewer's attention to an area of interest. The depth of field can be adjusted using the current aperture value found in the cinematic camera settings. I then adjust my manual focus distance plane to choose my area of focus. This is also great for animated focus pulls, which is very easy to achieve in UE4's real-time viewport. Once I'm happy with the overall sequence, I then add a very subtle amount of camera shake to each shot, using the camera shake blueprint in UE4. This is a simple and quick solution and provides enough parameters to generate a subtle procedural shake for the cameras in the scene. As each shot had a different requirement, I used one blueprint per shot. To wrap things up, when animating and editing sequences, I think it is very important to use real-world references as a guide. I also try to be fluid in my approach, regularly moving shots around and even starting all over if necessary. Last but not least, I like to share my progress with others, as feedback is a really good way of giving you perspective. Thanks for listening.
Everything you just saw was captured directly from the engine in real time. That was important as we had to run the interactive visualizer at launch events for the vehicle, so we couldn't get away with rendering frames out and editing them later. The touchscreen experience runs at 4K and enables customers to configure, explore and learn all about the Mach-E, as well as generate personalised content based on the selections they've made. To allow this, we kept everything dynamic. There's no static lighting or pre-baked light maps. While the sequence plays on screen, the user is even still able to change the spec of the car if they want to see the change while the animation is still playing.
So, what's next? What does the future look like for product visualization? From my point of view, as the technology grows, so do we with what we can offer our clients. I see a future for our industry where we have a single point of truth, so the actual 3D model, with hundreds of ways to produce great content from it, all using Epic's Unreal Engine. With ray tracing and other future enhancements, we are going to see a lot more content generated from Unreal.
So how do we do? The content that we produced went live to the world for the reveal of the Mustang Mach-E in November 2019. Visitors to the LA Auto Show using the UE4 touchscreen experience reported an increase in their brand favorability. This experience was then seen around the world, serving market-specific content for all possible specifications in all relevant languages. The high-quality animations, stills, and personalized content produced were then used in a multitude of different channels, from shows to web and social media. Consumers were able to see this incredible vehicle in all its beauty and deep dive into the amazing new technologies offered by Ford. So was this a success? By every measure. There were 1.6 million visitors to the Ford Mustang Mach-E website in the first 2 weeks of going live. The content we produced was part of the award-winning reveal campaign. First edition variant of the Mustang Mach-E sold out in the US in just 9 days. I'd say that's a pretty good success story for a brand new
all-electric vehicle that consumers hadn't been able to physically touch for themselves.